Marcus Wellington III stood by the tall window in his apartment high above New York City. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. From where he stood, he could see the busy streets below. Cars looked like tiny toys from this height. People walked around like ants. Everything seemed so small from up here in his penthouse. But Marcus was not looking at the city. He was watching his son, David. The 12-year-old boy sat in the corner of the room. His head was down. His shoulders were bent forward. David was trying to make himself as small as possible in the big leather chair. 2 years ago, everything had been different. David used to run around the apartment. He would laugh loudly. He would ask his father to play games with him. He would beg to go to the park or visit friends. But that was before the hair started falling out. Marcus remembered the first time he noticed it. David had come to breakfast one morning. There was a small bald spot on the back of his head. It was about the size of a coin. Marcus thought maybe David had bumped his head, or maybe he had cut his hair wrong. "David, what happened to your hair back there?" Marcus had asked. David had touched the spot with his hand. His eyes got wide with worry. "I don't know, Dad. It was like that when I woke up." Marcus had not been too worried then. Hair problems happened to kids sometimes. They would go to the doctor. The doctor would give them some medicine. Everything would be fine in a few weeks, but it was not fine. More hair fell out. The small spot became bigger. New spots appeared. David's thick brown hair started to disappear piece by piece. Each morning there would be more hair on his pillow, more empty spaces on his head. Marcus took David to the best doctors in the city. They had fancy offices with expensive art on the walls. They wore white coats and spoke with big words. The first doctor said it was stress. He gave David pills to take every day. The second doctor said it was an allergy. She gave David special shampoo that smelled like medicine. The third doctor said it was something called alopecia. He said David's body was attacking his own hair. "Will it grow back?" Marcus had asked. The doctor had looked sad. "Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Every case is different." Marcus spent more money. He took David to doctors in other cities. They tried new medicines. They tried special lights that were supposed to help hair grow. They tried shots that hurt David's scalp. Nothing worked. The hair kept falling out until David's head was completely bald. The worst part was watching David change. The happy, confident boy slowly disappeared. David stopped wanting to go outside. He would not visit his friends anymore. He quit the soccer team he loved. He would not even go to school most days. "I look like a freak," David would say. "Everyone stares at me." Marcus bought the best wigs money could buy. They were made from real hair. They looked almost perfect. But David hated wearing them. He said they felt fake. He said they made his head hot and itchy. Most of the time, David just wore baseball caps pulled down low over his face. Marcus tried everything he could think of. He hired private teachers so David would not have to go to school. He bought David every video game and toy he wanted. He took him on expensive trips to amazing places. But nothing made David happy anymore. The boy who used to fill the apartment with laughter now spent most of his time alone in his room. He would only come out for meals. Even then, he barely spoke. He would eat quickly and go back to hiding. Marcus felt helpless. He was one of the richest men in America. He had built a technology company from nothing. He owned buildings and cars and boats. He could buy almost anything in the world, but he could not buy his son's happiness back. At night, Marcus would lie in his bed and think about his wife, Sarah. She had died in a car accident when David was only 5 years old. Marcus had promised her that he would take care of their son. He would make sure David had everything he needed. He would protect him from all the bad things in the world. But how could he protect David from his own body? How could he fight something that the best doctors could not fix? Marcus had grown up poor. His father had worked in a factory. His mother had cleaned other people's houses. Marcus had studied hard and worked harder. He had built his company to make sure his family would never struggle like he had. He believed that money could solve any problem. Money could open any door. Money could fix anything that was broken. But looking at David now, Marcus felt like he was failing. All his money felt useless. His son was disappearing right in front of him, and Marcus did not know how to bring him back. David had not smiled in weeks. He had not played any games. He had not watched his favorite movies. He just sat in that chair staring at nothing. Sometimes Marcus would try to talk to him. He would ask about David's day or suggest they do something fun together. But David would just shrug and give short answers. "I'm fine, Dad. I don't want to do anything. Can I just go to my room?" Marcus wanted to grab his son and shake him. He wanted to tell David that he was still the same wonderful boy he had always been. Hair did not matter. But Marcus knew that David would not believe him. The boy saw only what was missing. He could not see all the good things that were still there. The apartment felt too quiet. It used to be full of David's friends coming over to play. Now no one came to visit. The expensive toys sat unused. The big television played to an empty room. Marcus walked over to where David was sitting. He sat down in the chair next to his son. David did not look up. "David," Marcus said softly, "I know this is hard. I know you're hurting, but we're going to figure this out together. I promise." David finally looked at his father. His eyes were red and tired. "What if it never gets better, Dad? What if I'm always going to look like this?" Marcus felt his heart break a little more. He reached out and touched David's hand. "Then we'll learn to be okay with that. But right now, let's just take it one day at a time." David nodded but did not look convinced. He went back to staring out the window at the city below. Marcus sat with him in the quiet apartment, feeling more lost than he had ever felt in his life. 3 weeks later, Marcus woke up to the sound of crying. He jumped out of bed and ran to David's room. His son was sitting on the bathroom floor, looking in a small mirror. There were tears running down his face. "David, what's wrong?" Marcus asked, even though he already knew. "I hate how I look," David said through his tears. "I'm ugly. I'm a monster." Marcus knelt down next to his son. "You are not ugly. You are not a monster. You are my beautiful boy." But David would not listen. He threw the mirror across the room. It hit the wall and broke into pieces. "I don't want to live like this anymore, Dad. I can't do it." Those words scared Marcus more than anything. He held David close while his son cried. Marcus made a decision right then. They had tried everything the rich and famous people suggested. They had been to the best doctors and the fanciest clinics. Nothing had worked. Maybe it was time to try something different. The next morning, Marcus called his office. "I'm not coming in today," he told his secretary. "Cancel all my meetings." "But Mr. Wellington, you have the board meeting at 2 o'clock, she said. "Cancel it," Marcus said. "Family comes first." Marcus went to David's room. His son was still in bed even though it was almost noon. The curtains were closed. The room was dark. "Get dressed," Marcus said. "We're going out." David pulled the covers over his head. "I don't want to go anywhere." "I know you don't want to, but we're going anyway. Trust me." It took Marcus an hour to get David out of bed and dressed. David put on his usual uniform, jeans, a hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled down low. Marcus looked at his own clothes. He was wearing an expensive suit and shiny shoes. He looked like what he was, a rich businessman. Maybe that was part of the problem. Marcus changed into jeans and a simple shirt. He had not worn clothes like this in years. They felt strange but more comfortable somehow. "Where are we going?" David asked as they got into the elevator. "I don't know yet," Marcus said, "but we're not staying in this apartment anymore." Marcus told his driver to take them uptown, away from their usual neighborhood. He wanted to go somewhere different, somewhere they had never been before. Maybe a change of place would help David feel different too. The car drove through parts of the city Marcus rarely saw. They passed small shops and restaurants. They saw people walking on the sidewalks, talking and laughing. Everything looked more real than the quiet, expensive streets near their apartment. "Stop here," Marcus told the driver when they reached Harlem. The driver looked surprised. "Are you sure, Mr. Wellington? This isn't your usual area." "I'm sure," Marcus said. Marcus and David got out of the car. The street was busy and loud. Music played from open windows. People called to each other from across the street. Children ran around playing games. It was so different from their quiet neighborhood. David looked around nervously. "Dad, I don't think we should be here." "Why not?" Marcus asked. "These are just people like us." They started walking down the street. Marcus felt uncomfortable at first. People looked at him in his clean clothes and expensive watch. He realized he probably looked out of place. But no one bothered them. Most people just minded their own business. David kept his head down and his cap pulled low. He walked close to his father. Marcus could tell his son was scared and embarrassed, but Marcus was determined to keep going. They needed to get out of their safe, quiet world. They needed to see that life existed outside their expensive bubble. They walked for about an hour. David complained that his feet hurt. He wanted to go home. But Marcus kept encouraging him to walk a little further. "Look around," Marcus said. "See how many different kinds of people there are. See how they all look different from each other, but they're all just living their lives." David looked up for a moment. He saw an old man with scars on his face, a woman with a missing tooth, a teenager with tattoos covering his arms, a little girl with glasses that were too big for her face. Everyone looked different. Everyone had something that made them stand out. "See?" Marcus said. "Everyone has something. You're not the only one who looks different." They kept walking until David said he was hungry. Marcus looked around for a place to eat. He saw fancy restaurants that looked like the places they usually went. But he also saw small diners and food trucks. He decided to try something new. "Let's eat there," Marcus said, pointing to a small restaurant with a hand-painted sign. The food was simple, but good. David ate more than he had in weeks. Maybe it was because he was hungry from walking. Or maybe it was because no one in the restaurant stared at him. People were too busy with their own meals and conversations. After lunch, they walked some more. David was getting tired, but he seemed less nervous. He even looked up from the ground a few times. Marcus was proud of him for being brave. That's when David stopped walking. He was looking at something across the street. "Dad," David said, "my hair is getting long on the sides. The parts that are left. It looks messy." Marcus looked at his son. David was right. The few patches of hair he had left were getting long and uneven. It made the bald spots look even more obvious. "Do you want to get a haircut?" Marcus asked. David nodded. "But not at our usual place. They always make a big deal about my condition. They whisper about me like I can't hear them." Marcus understood. Their usual barbershop was expensive and fancy. The people there treated David like he was sick or broken. They spoke in quiet voices and looked at him with pity. Marcus looked around the street. There were several barbershops nearby. Most of them looked small and simple. Nothing like the fancy salon they usually went to. "Which one do you want to try?" Marcus asked. David looked around. His eyes stopped at a small shop in the middle of the block. There was warm light coming from the windows. Marcus could hear laughter and talking from inside. There was a simple sign that said Soul Scissors in blue letters. "That one," David said, pointing to the shop. "It sounds friendly." Marcus looked at the shop. It was small and looked old. The paint on the outside was fading. It was nothing like the places they usually went, but something about it felt welcoming. The laughter coming from inside sounded real and happy. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked. David nodded. For the first time in weeks, he looked a little bit excited about something. They crossed the street together. As they got closer to the shop, Marcus could see inside through the windows. There were several chairs where men were getting their hair cut. The barbers were talking and joking with their customers. Everyone looked relaxed and happy. Marcus felt nervous. He was used to places where everyone knew his name and treated him like he was important. This place looked like no one would care who he was or how much money he had. But when he looked at David, he saw something he had not seen in months. His son looked curious instead of scared. David was actually looking forward to going inside. Marcus took a deep breath. "Okay," he said. "Let's try something new." They walked to the door of Soul Scissors. Marcus could hear his heart beating fast. He did not know what they would find inside, but for the first time in a long time he felt like they were moving in the right direction. David reached for the door handle. "Ready, Dad?" Marcus smiled at his son. "Ready." The bell above the door rang as Marcus and David walked into Soul Scissors. The shop was warm and filled with the smell of hair products and aftershave. 3 barber chairs sat in a row. each one occupied by a man getting his hair cut. The barbers were all talking and laughing with their customers. Marcus felt out of place immediately. Even in his simple clothes, he still looked like he did not belong here. His shoes were too clean. His watch was too expensive. Everything about him screamed rich man, but David seemed more comfortable. He looked around the shop with interest instead of fear. There were old pictures on the walls showing different haircuts. A small television in the corner played a basketball game. The whole place felt alive and friendly. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" asked a voice from the back of the shop. Marcus turned to see a man walking toward them. He was tall and strong-looking, probably in his 40s. His dark skin was smooth and his smile was warm. He wore a simple black shirt and moved with confidence. There was something about him that made people want to trust him right away. "I'm Jerome," the man said, extending his hand to Marcus. "Welcome to my shop." Marcus shook Jerome's hand. The man's grip was firm and honest. "I'm Marcus, and this is my son David. We were hoping to get him a haircut." Jerome looked at David with kind eyes. David still had his cap pulled down low, but Jerome did not seem to notice anything unusual. He treated David like any other customer. "Well, David, you came to the right place," Jerome said with a smile. "I've been cutting hair for 25 years. I think I can help you out." David nodded but did not say anything. He was nervous again, but not as scared as he usually was in new places. "You boys from around here?" Jerome asked as he cleaned off one of his chairs. "No," Marcus said. "We live downtown. We were just walking around and David needed a haircut." Jerome nodded. "I like people who explore. Too many folks stick to the same old places their whole lives. You miss out on good things that way." Marcus was surprised by how comfortable Jerome made him feel. The man did not seem impressed by Marcus's expensive watch or the way he spoke. Jerome treated him like a regular person. "You play any sports, David?" Jerome asked as David slowly walked toward the chair. David looked up for the first time. "I used to play soccer, but I quit." "Why'd you quit?" "You get hurt?" David hesitated. Marcus held his breath, waiting to see what his son would say. "I just didn't want to play anymore," David said quietly. Jerome nodded like this was a perfectly normal answer. "That's fair. Sometimes we need breaks from things. You ever think about trying basketball? I coach a team for kids your age on weekends." David looked interested. "Really? You coach kids?" "Sure do. Been doing it for 10 years now. Some of the best kids I know never played sports before they came to my team." Marcus watched as David climbed into Jerome's chair. Usually David hated going to barbers. He would fidget and complain the whole time, but something about Jerome made him feel safe. "So what kind of cut are we doing today?" Jerome asked, standing behind David. David's hands went to his cap. Marcus saw his son's face change. The fear came back into his eyes. This was always the hardest part, when David had to show people what he looked like without his hat. David started to say, then stopped. Jerome seemed to understand that something was wrong. He did not push David or ask questions. Instead, he just waited patiently. Marcus stepped forward. "David has a condition called alopecia. He's lost most of his hair." Jerome nodded seriously. "That must be tough, buddy." David looked up at Jerome in the mirror. "You're not going to feel sorry for me?" Jerome laughed, but not in a mean way. "Feel sorry for you? Why would I do that?" "You think having hair makes someone better than not having hair?" David looked confused. "Doesn't it?" "Not where I come from," Jerome said. "I know plenty of bald men who are stronger and smarter and kinder than men with full heads of hair. Hair doesn't make the man, David. The man makes the man." Slowly, David reached up and took off his cap. His completely bald head was revealed. Marcus watched Jerome's face carefully, looking for any sign of shock or pity. But Jerome's expression did not change at all. He looked at David's head the same way he would look at anyone else's hair. "Okay," Jerome said simply. "Let's see what we're working with here." Jerome began to examine David's scalp carefully. He was gentle and professional. He did not make any comments about how David looked. He just focused on doing his job. "You know, David," Jerome said as he worked, "I grew up in foster care, moved from house to house when I was a kid. I was small for my age and had crooked teeth. Kids used to tease me all the time." David listened carefully. "What did you do?" "At first I tried to hide. I would eat lunch by myself and never raised my hand in class. I thought if I could just be invisible, nobody would notice the things that were wrong with me." Jerome began to clean and shape the areas around David's ears where a little bit of hair still grew. "But you know what I learned? Jerome continued. Hiding just made me feel worse. And the kids who were mean to me? They weren't happy either. Happy people don't need to make other people feel bad. So what changed? David asked. Jerome smiled. I met a man named Mr. Johnson. He ran the community center in my neighborhood. He was bald too, but not because of a condition like yours. He just shaved his head every day because he liked how it looked. Marcus found himself listening as carefully as David. Jerome had a way of telling stories that made you want to hear more. Mr. Johnson taught me something important, Jerome said. He told me that real strength comes from accepting who you are, not trying to be someone else. He said the things that make us different are often the things that make us special. David was staring at Jerome in the mirror. Do you really believe that? I do, Jerome said without hesitation. And you know what? Mr. Johnson was right. Once I stopped trying to hide who I was, I started making real friends. I found things I was good at. I discovered that the opinion that mattered most was my own. Jerome finished cleaning up David's scalp and stepped back to look at his work. There, now you look sharp. David looked at himself in the mirror. For the first time in months, he did not look away immediately. Jerome had somehow made his bald head look neat and clean. More than that, David looked confident. You did good work on yourself today, Jerome told David. Takes courage to try new things and meet new people. David smiled. It was small, but it was real. Marcus felt tears in his eyes watching his son smile again. How much do I owe you? Marcus asked, reaching for his wallet. $20, Jerome said. Marcus almost laughed. He usually paid 10 times that much for David's haircuts. He pulled out a $100 bill and handed it to Jerome. Jerome looked at the money and handed it back. $20, like I said. Please, keep the extra, Marcus insisted. You've done something special here. Jerome shook his head. I did my job. That's worth $20, no more, no less. Marcus was amazed. No one ever refused his money. Everyone always wanted more from him. Can we come back? David asked suddenly. Jerome smiled. Of course you can. You're welcome here anytime. As they walked toward the door, David turned back to Jerome. Thank you for not feeling sorry for me. Thank you for trusting me with your story, Jerome replied. Outside the shop, David walked differently. His shoulders were straighter. He was not hiding behind his father anymore. How do you feel? Marcus asked. David thought for a moment. Different. Good different. Marcus looked back at the shop. Through the window, he could see Jerome already working on his next customer. The man was laughing at something Jerome had said. For the first time in 2 years, Marcus felt hope. They had found something special in that little shop. They had found Jerome. 2 weeks later, David asked his father something that surprised Marcus completely. Dad, can we go back to Jerome's shop? Marcus looked up from his laptop. David was standing in the living room without his baseball cap. This was the first time in months that David had walked around the apartment with his head uncovered. Of course we can, Marcus said. But you just got a haircut. Well, you know what I mean, David smiled. I know, but I want to talk to Jerome about something, and maybe some of the other guys there too. Marcus closed his laptop immediately. If David wanted to go somewhere and talk to people, Marcus would drive him there himself. The ride to Harlem felt different this time. David sat up straight in the car seat. He looked out the windows at the city passing by. He was not hiding or trying to make himself invisible. When they walked into Soul Scissors, Jerome looked up from the customer he was working on and smiled big. Well, look who's back, Jerome said. How you doing, David? Good, David said, and Marcus could tell he really meant it. The shop was busy. All 3 chairs were full, and several men were waiting their turn. Marcus and David sat down in the waiting area. David looked around at all the different people. There was an old man reading a newspaper, a teenager with headphones around his neck, a middle-aged man in work clothes who looked tired, a young father holding a baby while he waited. None of them stared at David or seemed to notice anything unusual about him. You know, said the old man, looking up from his newspaper. My grandson is about your age. He plays basketball at the school down the street. David looked interested. Is he any good? He thinks he is, the old man laughed. But I remember when I was his age, I thought I was going to play in the NBA. Turned out I was better at fixing cars than shooting baskets. What kind of cars do you fix? David asked. Soon David was having a real conversation with a stranger. Marcus watched in amazement. For months, David had barely spoken to anyone except Marcus and his teachers. Now he was talking and asking questions like his old self. Jerome finished with his customer and called David over to his chair. "What can I do for you today, young man?" David climbed into the chair and looked at Jerome in the mirror. "I wanted to ask you about something. You said you coach basketball, that's right, every Saturday morning at the community center. Could I maybe watch sometime? I don't want to play yet." "I just want to see what it's like," Jerome smiled. "You can do more than watch. You can help me coach if you want. I could use an assistant." David's eyes got wide. "Really? You'd want me to help?" "Sure would. Some of those kids are tough to handle. I bet you'd be good at helping them focus." Marcus felt his heart jump. David was volunteering to spend time with other kids. For months he had avoided children his own age. While Jerome worked on David's scalp, he told them about his basketball team. "I've got 12 kids on the team," Jerome said, "ages 10 to 14. Some of them are really good players. Some of them have never touched a basketball before they came to me." "What kinds of kids are they?" David asked. "All kinds. Rich kids, poor kids, kids with 2 parents, kids with no parents, kids who do great in school, kids who struggle. The only thing they have in common is they all need somewhere to belong." Jerome paused in his work and looked at David seriously. "You know what I've learned coaching kids? The ones who look different or feel different often end up being the strongest players. They've had to work harder to fit in, so they know how to work hard on the court too." David was quiet for a moment. "Do you really think I could help coach them?" "I know you could," Jerome said. "You've got something those kids need to see." "What's that?" "Courage. It takes courage to walk into new places and meet new people when you feel different. You've got that courage. These kids need to see that being different doesn't mean being weak." As Jerome worked, more men came and went from the shop. Marcus noticed that Jerome knew everyone's name. He remembered details about their lives. He asked about their families and their jobs. The shop felt like a community center where everyone was welcome. An elderly man named Frank told David about his time in the army. A young man named Carlos talked about starting his own business. A teenager named Mike shared his dreams of becoming a musician. Each person treated David like he belonged there. "You see all these different people?" Jerome asked David quietly. "Frank is missing 2 fingers from an accident at work. Carlos has scars on his arms from when he was in a gang as a kid. Mike stutters when he gets nervous. Everyone's got something, David, but look how they carry themselves." David looked around the shop. Jerome was right. Everyone had something that made them different or marked them in some way. But they all seemed confident and comfortable. "They don't hide," David said. "Exactly. They learned that hiding takes more energy than just being yourself." Jerome finished his work and spun David's chair around so he could see himself in the mirror. Again, David did not look away from his reflection immediately. "You know what I see when I look at you?" Jerome asked. "What?" "I see a young man who's been through something tough and came out stronger. I see someone who's learning that real confidence comes from the inside, not from how you look on the outside." David stared at himself for a long moment. Then he said something that made Marcus's heart soar. "I think I'm ready to try going back to school." Marcus almost fell out of his chair. David had been refusing to go to school for weeks. He'd been doing lessons at home with private teachers. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked. David nodded. "I think so. Maybe if I can help Jerome coach kids, I can handle being around kids at school too." Jerome smiled. "That sounds like a great plan. And remember, if anyone gives you trouble, you can always come back here. This is your place now too." On the way out of the shop, David stopped to shake hands with several of the men who were still waiting. He thanked them for talking with him. Marcus watched his son act like a confident young man instead of a scared little boy. "Dad," David said as they walked to the car, "I think I understand what Jerome means about being different." "What do you mean?" "All those men in there are different from each other. They look different, they talk different, they have different problems, but they all seem happy with who they are." Marcus nodded. "Jerome has something special in that shop." "It's not just Jerome," David said. "It's everyone. They made me feel like I belong there just the way I am." That night, David did something he had not done in months. He ate dinner without wearing his cap. He told Marcus stories about the men he had met at the shop. He talked about maybe playing basketball again someday. Before bed, David looked at himself in the bathroom mirror for a long time. But instead of crying or getting upset, he just studied his reflection calmly. "I look different from other kids," he said to Marcus. "But maybe that's okay. Jerome says different can be special. Marcus hugged his son tight. Jerome is right. You are special, and not because of how you look. You're special because of who you are inside. For the first time in months, David fell asleep without crying. Marcus sat in his own room and thought about the changes he had seen in his son. It had only been 2 visits to Jerome's shop, but David was already becoming himself again. Marcus realized that he had been wrong about something important. He had thought that money and expensive doctors could fix his son's problem. But Jerome had not fixed David's baldness. Instead, he had helped David see that the baldness was not really the problem. The problem had been shame. The problem had been hiding. The problem had been thinking that being different meant being less than other people. Jerome had not given David his hair back. But he had given David something even better. He had given him back his confidence and his hope. Saturday morning came and David woke up before his alarm clock. He was excited about going to help Jerome coach basketball. Marcus had never seen his son so eager to spend time with other children. "Are you nervous?" Marcus asked as they drove to the community center. "A little," David admitted. "But Jerome said I could just watch if I want to. I don't have to talk to anyone if I'm not ready." The community center was an old brick building with basketball courts, a small gym, and meeting rooms. When Marcus and David walked inside, they could hear the sound of basketballs bouncing and kids laughing. Jerome was already there, setting up cones for practice drills. He waved when he saw them coming. "Perfect timing," Jerome said. "The kids will be here in about 10 minutes. David, you ready for this?" David nodded, but Marcus could see he was nervous. "What if they ask about my head? Then you tell them the truth if you want to. Or you can tell them it's none of their business. Either way is fine." The first kids started arriving. They were all different ages and sizes. Some looked confident and athletic. Others looked shy and unsure of themselves. David watched them carefully. A girl about David's age walked over to Jerome. She had thick glasses and braces on her teeth. "Hi, Mr. Jerome," she said. "Who's the new kid?" "This is David," Jerome said. "He's going to help me coach today." "David, this is Maria. She's got the best free throw shot on the team." Maria smiled at David. "Cool. You play basketball?" "I used to play soccer," David said quietly. "Soccer's fun, too. My brother plays soccer, that was it." No questions about David's head. No staring. Maria just accepted him and moved on to get a basketball. More kids arrived, and Jerome introduced David to each one. A boy named Kevin, who was very tall for his age. Twin brothers named James and John, who were always joking around. A quiet girl named Ashley, who was smaller than the others, but very fast. As practice started, David stayed close to Jerome. He watched how Jerome talked to the kids. The coach was patient when someone made a mistake. He encouraged the shy kids to try harder. He calmed down the kids who got too excited or frustrated. "See how Kevin keeps looking down at his feet when he dribbles?" Jerome said quietly to David. "He's worried about messing up." David watched Kevin. The tall boy was very awkward with the basketball. He would lose control of it and get embarrassed. "Kevin," Jerome called out. "Come here for a second." Kevin walked over looking worried that he was in trouble. "You're doing great," Jerome told him. "But I want to teach you something. Look at me, not at the ball." "But what if I lose it?" Kevin asked. "Then you pick it up and try again. Everyone loses the ball sometimes. Even the guys in the NBA. Jerome showed Kevin how to feel the ball with his fingertips instead of watching it. "Trust your hands, not your eyes." David watched Kevin's confidence grow as Jerome worked with him. The boy started to relax and actually got better at controlling the ball. "You want to try helping someone?" Jerome asked David. David looked around at the kids practicing. He saw Ashley struggling with shooting the basketball. She was too small to reach the regular height basket, but she was trying anyway. "Maybe I could help Ashley," David suggested. Jerome smiled. "Good choice. Go for it." David walked over to Ashley. His heart was beating fast, but he remembered how Jerome had talked to the kids. "Be patient. Be encouraging." "Hey, Ashley," David said. "Want me to show you something that might help?" Ashley looked up at him. "I'm too short. I can't reach the basket." "I used to think I was too short for stuff too," David said. "But Jerome taught me that everyone has their own way of doing things." David showed Ashley how to use the lower basket that was set up for younger kids. "Start here and work your way up. Build your strength first." Ashley tried shooting at the lower basket and made several shots in a row. Her face lit up with happiness. "I did it," she said. "You sure did. And when you get stronger, you can try the higher basket." For the rest of practice, David found himself naturally helping the kids. He was good at seeing when someone was frustrated or embarrassed. He remembered how that felt. He knew just what to say to help them feel better. When practice was over, the kids gathered around Jerome for their usual team talk. "Before you go," Jerome said, "I want you to meet my new assistant coach officially. This is David. He's going to be helping us from now on." One of the kids, James, raised his hand. "Coach Jerome, can I ask David something?" Jerome looked at David. "Up to David." David nodded even though he was nervous. "Why don't you have any hair?" James asked. The whole group got quiet. David felt his face get hot. But then he remembered what Jerome had taught him about being honest. "I have a condition called alopecia," David said. "It makes my hair fall out." "Does it hurt?" asked Maria. "No, it doesn't hurt my body, but it hurt my feelings for a while." "Why?" asked Ashley. David thought about how to explain it. "Because I thought it made me different in a bad way. I thought people wouldn't like me because I looked different." Kevin, the tall boy, spoke up. "I used to think people wouldn't like me because I'm so much taller than everyone else. And I thought people wouldn't like me because I wear glasses," said Maria. "I thought people wouldn't like me because I'm smaller than everyone," said Ashley. Jerome smiled at David. "Seems like everyone here knows what it feels like to worry about being different," one of the twin brothers, John, asked. "So what changed your mind?" David looked at Jerome, then back at the kids. "Jerome taught me that being different isn't bad, and all of you just proved it. You didn't care about my hair. You just wanted to know if I was nice and if I could help you with basketball." The kids nodded. It made perfect sense to them. "Can you come back next week?" asked Ashley. "If you want me to," David said. "We do." Several kids said at once. As the kids left with their parents, many of them said goodbye to David personally. They thanked him for helping them. They told him they hoped he would come back. Jerome and David cleaned up the equipment together. "How do you feel?" Jerome asked. "Good," David said. "Really good. I forgot how much I like helping people." "You're a natural coach," Jerome said. "Those kids connected with you right away." "Because I know what it feels like to be different," David said. "Exactly. That's your superpower, David. You understand what other people are going through because you've been through tough times yourself." On the way home, David was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Dad, I think I want to go back to school on Monday." Marcus almost crashed the car. "Are you sure? You don't have to rush into anything, I'm sure. If I can help coach those kids, I can handle being around kids at school. And maybe I can help other kids who feel different too." That evening, David called his school and told them he would be coming back on Monday. He also asked if there were any clubs or groups he could join, where he could help other students. The school counselor was surprised but happy to hear from David. She told him about a peer support group for kids who were dealing with medical conditions or other challenges. "I'd like to join that," David said. "I think I could help." After dinner, David sat with Marcus and told him about each kid he had met at basketball practice. He remembered all their names and something special about each one. "Jerome is right," David said. "Everyone has something they worry about. Everyone feels different sometimes. The difference is whether you let that stop you or whether you use it to help other people." Marcus felt proud of his son. In just a few weeks, David had gone from hiding in his room to wanting to help other children. Jerome had done something that all of Marcus's money and all the fancy doctors could not do. He had helped David see his condition as a strength instead of a weakness. "I want to keep going to Jerome's shop," David said. "Not just for haircuts, but to talk to him and the other men there. They have good stories and good advice." "We can go as often as you want," Marcus promised. That night, David went to bed excited about going to school the next week. He was excited about helping Jerome coach basketball again. He was excited about joining the support group at school. Marcus realized that his son was not just getting better. David was becoming the person he was always meant to be, someone who used his own struggles to help other people feel less alone. Marcus sat in his office looking out at the city below. It had been 3 months since that first visit to Jerome's barbershop. David was back in school and doing well. He was helping Jerome coach basketball every Saturday. He had joined the peer support group at school and was helping other kids who felt different or struggled with challenges. But Marcus found himself thinking more and more about Jerome. There was something about the man that Marcus could not stop thinking about. Jerome had done more for David in a few weeks than years of expensive therapy and medical treatments had accomplished. Marcus decided he wanted to do something to thank Jerome. Maybe he could help Jerome expand his business, or move to a better location. Marcus had lots of money and lots of connections. Surely there was something Jerome needed. That afternoon, Marcus went to Soul Scissors by himself. David was at school and Marcus wanted to talk to Jerome alone. The shop was quiet. Jerome was cleaning his equipment and organizing his supplies. Only one other customer was there, an elderly man getting a shave. "Marcus," Jerome said with surprise. "Good to see you. Where's David?" "He's at school. I wanted to talk to you about something." Jerome nodded and gestured for Marcus to sit down. "What's on your mind?" Marcus had practiced what he wanted to say, but now he felt nervous. "I want to thank you for what you've done for David. You've changed his life." "David changed his own life," Jerome said simply. "I just reminded him of who he already was. Still, I want to do something for you. I have connections in the city. I could help you open a bigger shop in a better neighborhood. Or maybe several shops. You could build a whole chain of barber shops." Jerome listened quietly, then shook his head. "I appreciate the offer, Marcus, but I'm happy where I am." Marcus was confused. "But you could make so much more money. You could reach more people. Could I?" Jerome asked. "If I had a bigger shop in a fancy neighborhood, would kids like David feel comfortable coming in? Would men like Frank and Carlos feel welcome?" Marcus had not thought about that. "Well, you could have shops in different neighborhoods. Then I wouldn't be here," Jerome said. "This neighborhood is my home. These people are my community. Moving away to make more money doesn't make sense to me." Marcus felt frustrated. "But don't you want more for yourself? A nicer house? A newer car? Financial security?" Jerome smiled. "I have financial security. I make enough money to pay my bills and help my neighbors when they need it. I own my house. It's not big, but it's mine. My car gets me where I need to go. But you could have so much more," Marcus insisted. "More what?" Jerome asked. "More things? More stress? More time away from the people who mattered to me." Marcus opened his mouth to answer, then realized he did not know what to say. Jerome sat down in the chair next to Marcus. "Can I tell you something about my life?" Marcus nodded. "I grew up poor, real poor. My mother worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. I watched her kill herself trying to make more money, thinking that would solve all our problems." Jerome paused, looking out the window at the street. "When I was 18, I got a job at a fancy barbershop downtown. The kind of place you probably go to. They paid me twice what I could make anywhere else." "That sounds good," Marcus said. "It was good money," Jerome agreed. "But I was miserable. The customers looked down on me. My boss treated me like I was nothing. I had to pretend to be someone I wasn't just to fit in." Jerome stood up and walked to the window. "After 2 years, I quit. I came back here and opened this little shop. I made less money, but I was happy again." Marcus was trying to understand. "So you chose to make less money?" "I chose to make enough money while doing work that mattered to me with people I cared about." Jerome turned back to Marcus. "You know what real success looks like to me? It's David walking into school with his head held high. It's Kevin making his first free throw shot. It's Ashley deciding she's brave enough to try out for her school team." Marcus sat quietly, thinking about Jerome's words. "I see you trying to figure me out," Jerome said with a smile. "You think I'm crazy for not wanting more money?" "I just don't understand," Marcus admitted. "I've spent my whole life trying to make more money. I thought that was what success meant." "It is for some people," Jerome said, "and there's nothing wrong with that. But success means different things to different people." Jerome sat back down. "Can I ask you something, Marcus?" "Sure. Are you happy?" The question hit Marcus like a punch. He opened his mouth to say yes, then stopped. Was he happy? He had everything money could buy. But was he happy? "I don't know," Marcus said quietly. "When was the last time you felt really good about something you did? Not because it made you money, but because it mattered?" Marcus thought about it. Watching David get his confidence back. Seeing him help other kids. "Exactly," Jerome said. "That feeling you had watching David. That's what I feel every day in this shop. Every time I help someone feel better about themselves. Every time I give a kid advice that helps them make a good decision. Every time I listen to someone who needs to talk." Marcus was starting to understand something important. "Money is a tool," Jerome continued. "It can do good things or bad things depending on how you use it. But it's not a goal by itself. At least not for me. So what is your goal? Marcus asked. To make my little corner of the world a better place, to help people feel valued and respected, to be someone kids can look up to and learn from. Marcus felt something he had not felt in years. He felt inspired by someone else's way of living. I've been thinking about this wrong, Marcus said. Thinking about what wrong? Everything, success, money, what matters. Jerome nodded. It's easy to get confused about that stuff. Society tells us that more is always better, bigger is always better, but sometimes the best things are small and simple. Marcus looked around the shop. It was small and simple, but it was full of something his big apartment and fancy office were missing. It was full of real human connection. Jerome, Marcus said, can I ask you for a favor? What's that? Will you teach me what you taught David? About being comfortable with who you are? About finding purpose in helping other people? Jerome smiled. That's not something I can teach in a few lessons, Marcus. It's something you learn by doing. But if you want to start, you can come back here and just listen. Watch how people treat each other. Notice what makes them happy. I'd like that, Marcus said. And Marcus, you don't need to change everything about your life. You just need to figure out what really matters to you and focus more on that. As Marcus got ready to leave, he realized something important. He had come to the shop thinking he could help Jerome by giving him money or business opportunities. But Jerome had helped Marcus by giving him something much more valuable, a new way of thinking about what made life meaningful. Walking back to his car, Marcus felt different. For the first time in years, he was not thinking about his next business deal or how to make more money. He was thinking about how he could use what he had to make a real difference in people's lives. Maybe Jerome was right. Maybe the best things in life were not the biggest or most expensive things. Maybe the best things were the small, simple moments when you help someone else feel valued and loved. 6 months after their first visit to Soul Scissors, David came home from school with exciting news. Dad, guess what happened today? David said, practically bouncing with excitement. Marcus looked up from his computer. What's going on? Mrs. Johnson, the school counselor, asked me to speak at the school assembly next week. She wants me to talk about overcoming challenges and helping other kids. Marcus felt his heart swell with pride. That's wonderful, David. Are you nervous? A little bit, but Jerome said he would help me practice my speech and he's going to come watch me give it. Marcus smiled. Jerome had become such an important part of their lives. David visited the barber shop at least twice a week, not for haircuts, but just to talk and listen to the stories of the men who gathered there. What are you going to talk about? Marcus asked. About how I learned that being different isn't something to hide from, and about how helping other people makes you feel better about yourself. That Saturday, David was at the community center coaching basketball as usual. But this time, Marcus decided to stay and watch instead of just dropping David off. The team had grown from 12 kids to almost 20. Word had spread about Jerome's program and David's role in it. Parents were bringing their children from all over the city. Marcus watched David work with a new kid named Tommy. Tommy was very overweight and embarrassed about playing sports. He kept trying to hide in the back of the group. Hey, Tommy, David said quietly. Want to work on some passing drills with me? Tommy shook his head. I'm no good at this stuff. I used to think I wasn't good at anything, David said. Want to know a secret? Tommy nodded. Everyone here felt that way when they first started. Even Kevin. And look at him now. Tommy looked at Kevin, who was now one of the best players on the team and was helping teach the newer kids. Really? Tommy asked. Really. Jerome taught me that the only way to get good at something is to practice. And the only way to feel better about yourself is to stop hiding and start trying. Marcus watched his son patiently work with Tommy for the entire practice. By the end, Tommy was smiling and had made several good passes. After practice, Jerome walked over to Marcus. Your son is special, Jerome said. He has a gift for helping other people see their potential. He learned that from you, Marcus said. No, he learned it from his own experience. I just reminded him that his struggles could become his strength. Marcus had been thinking about something for weeks. Jerome, I want to ask you about something. What's that? David told me about your community service projects. The food drives, reading to kids at the library, visiting elderly people in nursing homes. Jerome nodded. We do what we can to help. I want to help too. Not with money, but with my time. I want to volunteer." Jerome looked surprised. "You sure about that?" "It's not glamorous work, I'm sure. David has found his purpose in helping other people. I want to find mine too." The next week, Marcus found himself at a homeless shelter, serving food alongside Jerome, David, and several other volunteers from the neighborhood. It was not the kind of place Marcus had ever been before. At first, Marcus felt awkward and out of place. His hands were soft from years of office work. He was not used to the hard physical work of cooking and cleaning. But Jerome and David helped him learn. "Just treat everyone with respect," Jerome told him. "Look them in the eye. Remember that they're people just like you who have fallen on hard times." Marcus served food to dozens of people that day, young mothers with children, elderly men who had lost their jobs, veterans who had struggled to adjust to civilian life. Each person had a story, and many of them shared those stories with Marcus. One elderly woman named Rose told Marcus about losing her apartment when her rent went up too high for her small pension to cover. "I worked as a teacher for 40 years, she said. "Never thought I'd end up in a place like this." Marcus listened to her story and realized how easily anyone could end up needing help. Bad luck, illness, job loss, any of these things could change a person's life completely. At the end of the day, Marcus felt something he had never felt before. He felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with making money or closing business deals. "How do you feel?" David asked as they walked to the car. "Tired," Marcus said. "But good tired, like I actually accomplished something important today." David smiled. "That's how I feel after coaching basketball, like I made a real difference." Over the next few months, Marcus began volunteering regularly. He helped at the homeless shelter. He read books to children at the local library. He even started helping Jerome teach basic computer skills to adults who were looking for jobs. One evening, Marcus and Jerome were sitting in the barber shop after closing time. They were planning the next weekend's food drive. "Can I tell you something?" Marcus said. "Of course. 6 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I thought success meant having more money than everyone else. I thought the best way to help people was to throw money at their problems." Jerome listened quietly. "But watching David change, and spending time with you and the people in this community, I've learned something important." "What's that?" "Real help doesn't come from money. It comes from time and attention and caring. It comes from seeing people as human beings instead of problems to be solved." Jerome nodded. "You've learned something it took me years to figure out." "I want to do more," Marcus said. "I want to set up a foundation that supports community programs like yours, not to take them over or change them, but to help them do what they're already doing." "That sounds good," Jerome said. "But remember what I told you before. The best help is the kind that empowers people to help themselves." "I understand that now," Marcus said. "I want to support programs that are already working, led by people who understand their communities." Jerome smiled. "Now you're thinking like a real community member instead of like a rich man trying to buy his way into heaven." Marcus laughed. "Is that what I was doing?" "Maybe a little bit. But your heart was in the right place. You just needed to learn a different way of helping." The next week, David gave his speech at the school assembly. Marcus and Jerome both attended, sitting in the back of the auditorium. David spoke confidently about his journey with alopecia. He talked about feeling ashamed and wanting to hide. He talked about meeting Jerome and learning that being different could be a source of strength instead of shame. "The most important thing I learned," David said to the audience of students, "is that everyone struggles with something. Everyone feels different or left out sometimes. But instead of letting that make us feel bad about ourselves, we can use it to help other people who are struggling too." David talked about coaching basketball and how helping other kids had helped him feel better about himself. When you help someone else, you forget about your own problems for a while. And when you see other people overcome their challenges, it reminds you that you can overcome yours too. The students listened carefully to David's speech. When he finished, they gave him a long round of applause. After the assembly, several students came up to David to thank him and ask questions. Some shared their own struggles with feeling different or left out. Marcus watched his son handle each conversation with patience and kindness. David had truly found his purpose in helping other people. Walking out of the school, Jerome put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You did good with that boy," Jerome said. "We did good," Marcus replied. "I couldn't have helped him find this confidence without you. And I couldn't have helped him without you being willing to try something new and trust a stranger," Jerome said. Marcus realized that Jerome was right. David's transformation had been a team effort. It had required Marcus to step outside his comfort zone and Jerome to share his wisdom. But most of all, it had required David to be brave enough to try again after feeling defeated. "Thank you," Marcus said to Jerome, "for everything." "Thank you for letting me be part of David's journey," Jerome replied, "and for letting me be part of yours too." 1 year later, Marcus stood in the back of a large conference room watching his son speak to an audience of 200 people. David was now 14 years old and had become a confident young speaker who traveled to schools and community centers, sharing his story about overcoming challenges. "When I first lost my hair," David was saying to the audience, "I thought my life was over. I thought everyone would stare at me and think I was weird or sick. I spent months hiding in my room, afraid to face the world." Marcus smiled as he listened to his son speak with such confidence and poise. David stood tall on the stage, his bald head shining under the lights. He was not hiding anymore. He was proud of who he was. "But then I met someone who changed my life," David continued. "His name is Jerome, and he taught me that being different is not something to be ashamed of. He taught me that our struggles can become our strengths if we use them to help other people." In the audience, Marcus could see Jerome sitting in the front row. The barber was wearing his best shirt and tie, looking proud as David spoke. Next to Jerome sat many of the kids from the basketball team, now teenagers themselves who had continued to grow and thrive under Jerome's guidance. David talked about the basketball team, the community service projects, and the peer support group he had started at his school. He talked about how helping other people had helped him heal from his own pain. "Today I run a support network for kids with medical conditions," David said. "We meet once a week online, and kids from all over the country join us to share their stories and encourage each other." Marcus felt amazed every time he heard about the reach of David's work. What had started as one scared boy hiding in his room had grown into a movement that was helping hundreds of young people. "The most important thing I want you to remember," David said as he finished his speech, "is that you are not defined by what makes you different. You are defined by how you choose to respond to your challenges and how you use your experiences to make the world a better place." The audience gave David a standing ovation. As people began to leave, many came up to thank David personally and share their own stories. Marcus walked over to where Jerome was standing with the basketball team kids. "How does it feel to watch your student become the teacher?" Marcus asked Jerome. Jerome smiled. "Feels like watching a miracle happen slowly. But David was always going to be special. He just needed to remember it." Kevin, now 16 and captain of his high school basketball team, came over to join them. "Coach Jerome, Coach David, thank you for everything you taught us." Other kids from the original team gathered around. Maria was now in high school and planning to become a teacher. Ashley had made her school's varsity basketball team, despite being one of the smallest players. Tommy, the overweight boy who had been afraid to try, was now coaching younger kids himself. "You see what you started?" Marcus said to Jerome. "We all started it together," Jerome replied. "Each person who was willing to try something new, to help someone else, to believe that change was possible." After the event, Marcus, David, and Jerome went back to Soul Scissors. The shop looked exactly the same as it had that first day 2 years ago. Jerome had refused all of Marcus's offers to help him expand or upgrade. He was happy with his small shop and his neighborhood customers. "Some things don't need to change," Jerome had told Marcus. "This place works because it's simple and real. Making it bigger or fancier would change what makes it special." Marcus understood now. Jerome's shop was perfect the way it was because it served its purpose. It was a place where people could come to feel accepted and valued, no matter what they looked like or how much money they had. "Dad," David said as they sat in the shop, "I have some news I want to share with both of you." Marcus and Jerome looked at him with interest. "I got accepted to the summer program at the Community Leadership Institute. They want me to help design programs for kids with medical conditions." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride. David was only 14, but he was already being recognized as a leader in his field. "That's wonderful," Jerome said. "But are you sure you're ready for that kind of responsibility?" David smiled. "Remember what you taught me, Jerome. You said that our struggles prepare us for our purpose." "I think this is part of my purpose," Jerome nodded approvingly. "I think you're right." Marcus thought about how far they had all come. 2 years ago, he had been a wealthy man who thought money could solve any problem. Now he understood that the most important problems in life could only be solved with time, attention, and genuine caring. Marcus had used his wealth to establish the Jerome Washington Foundation, which supported community-based programs like Jerome's basketball team. But Marcus was careful to let the communities themselves decide how to use the money. He had learned that the best help was the kind that empowered people to help themselves. "I have some news too," Marcus said. The foundation board approved funding for 10 new community centers in neighborhoods that need them. Each one will be run by people from the community, just like Jerome runs his programs here. Jerome smiled. "That's good work, Marcus. You've learned how to use your resources to make a real difference." David looked at both men with gratitude. "You know what I think is amazing? We all helped each other become better people." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "Jerome helped me learn to be confident and to help other people, but I think helping me also made Jerome feel good about his work in a new way." Jerome nodded. "That's true. Watching you grow gave me more energy to keep doing what I do." "And Dad," David continued, "you learned how to use your money and influence to help people instead of just making more money. But helping other people also made you happier than you were before." Marcus realized David was right. In trying to help his son, Marcus had found a new purpose for his own life. His work with the foundation was more satisfying than any business deal he had ever made. "So we all got something by giving something," David said. "That's how real community works," Jerome said. "Everyone gives what they can and everyone receives what they need." As the sun set outside the barber shop, Marcus looked at his son and his friend Jerome. 3 people from very different backgrounds had come together and helped each other become the best versions of themselves. David was no longer the scared, hiding boy he had been 2 years ago. He was a confident young man who used his experiences to help others feel less alone. Jerome was still the same wise, caring man he had always been. But now he had the resources of Marcus's foundation to expand his work and help even more people. And Marcus was no longer just a wealthy businessman focused only on making money. He had learned that true success meant using his resources to lift other people up. "You know what I think?" David said as they prepared to leave the shop. "What's that?" Jerome asked. "I think my bald head was actually a gift." Marcus looked surprised. "How so?" "If I had never lost my hair, I never would have felt different or struggled. If I had never struggled, I wouldn't have understood how to help other people who struggle. If I couldn't help other people, I wouldn't have found my purpose." David stood up and looked at himself in the mirror of Jerome's barbershop. His bald head reflected the warm light of the shop. "I used to think my bald head made me ugly," David said. "Now I think it makes me who I'm supposed to be." Jerome put his hand on David's shoulder. "Your head was always beautiful, son. It just took you a while to see it." Marcus watched his son shine with confidence and purpose. David's soul was brighter than any hair could ever make him. And Marcus knew that both he and David had found something in this small barbershop that no amount of money could buy. They had found acceptance, purpose, and the joy that comes from using your own struggles to help other people heal from theirs. As they walked out of Soul Scissors together, Marcus realized that this was what happiness looked like. Not expensive things or impressive achievements, but simple moments of connection with people who truly cared about each other. David's story had begun with loss and shame, but it had become a story of hope, purpose, and the power of community to transform lives. And it all started with one man who saw past a young boy's differences to the light that was always shining inside him.